Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Western Spirit. Today, we have a very special guest. I wrote a whole big thing to introduce him, but I think most from the heart is usually the best. So I'll just say that when I was growing up as a Orthodox Jew in Brooklyn, New York, as a conservative Jew, it was hard to find role models and people to listen to that were of the same political and ideological opinions as me, and also knew how to express them in the public's view. And Dennis Prager is someone who I've always looked up to and listened to ever since I was, I guess, a pretty young child in Brooklyn. So, Dennis, it's a great pleasure to have you. Obviously, Dennis Prager Show, and all those other things that you do. It's an honor and a privilege to talk to you today.
I'm very touched. Thank you. And since you said it was from the heart, so
Toda rabba. Thank you so much, Dennis. So I guess maybe we'll just start from the easier stuff. My first question to you is, we're recording this on Wednesday. On Shabbos and Saturday, former President Trump, was almost killed, almost murdered at a rally. And so my first question to you is, what did you think when you first heard about it? What was your reaction? And what do you think, if, God forbid, the worst would have happened, where America would be today?
So the title of my weekly column, I have written a weekly column for 20 years. They're all on the internet, about 1,000 columns. And I take this very seriously, the column writing. And it is, the title of this week's is An Assassination Attempt Was Inevitable. And that's what I believe. You cannot have every dominant medium in a country declare the candidate for the presidency of one of the two major American parties, Hitler, and not have consequences. In fact, if people on the left are honest, they're not. If they were honest, they would be liberal or conservative, but they wouldn't be leftist. But if they were, they would acknowledge you can't have it both ways. You cannot condemn the attempted assassination or actual assassination of a Hitler. We all wish Hitler had been assassinated. It would have been the most moral act you could have engaged in, was to assassinate Hitler. So either Trump is Hitler, in which case assassination is called for, or he's not Hitler and you're lying about it. So this is the New York Times does not confront this intellectual challenge and discrepancy, but that is what it is. So that's number one. He was expected. Number two, the incompetence of the Secret Service because of the left, which has ruined, as I point out regularly, ruined every institution it has touched. The Secret Service is just one example because of its emphasis not on standards, but on DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion. So you have people who, especially more and more women, most women, there was no woman I know, and I talked to many, who wants, if she were to be guarded for her life as a very public person, would prefer 50-50 men and women. That they all prefer a man, and it makes perfect sense. If you saw the videos of the incompetence of some of the women, it's clear. But for the left, which is what the Democratic Party is, it's no longer liberal, it's left. DEI is necessary, not standards. As to your last question, what would have happened if, God forbid, there would have been chaos in the country? There would have been a level of anger and recrimination and hatred that had not been seen since the Civil War. Everyone, even most leftists, should thank God or thank Zeus or whatever they believe in, that he was not killed.
Yeah. Dennis, I have a just a historical context. I remember when the left was, I would go to in Brooklyn, we'd go visit my family in Manhattan. We would go by Union Square Park, and there would be these protests during the Bush administration, and there would be pictures of Bush and Hitler together. And then I remember Mitt Romney was called. He's like this power guy. They called him, put him back in chains. He was this guy who was riding with a dog on his roof, this mean guy, binders full of women. And McCain was, they called him, I guess, also some war criminal or stuff like that. Do you think that they brought this upon themselves, the left, in a lot of ways, this Trump phenomenon, meaning that they went so far to call even the most power of people Hitler? So the right went, okay, we're giving you a middle finger with Trump.
I don't think that's what happened, actually. They have gone too far, but uh, uh, this is always fascinating for me to tell people when I'm having an interview. It is uncanny that my field of study in graduate school at Columbia was communism. There were, I think, 10,000 students or whatever, seven of them, not 7,000, seven, majored in what was called communist affairs. I studied Russian, I learned Russian, I went to communist countries repeatedly. I never thought that all that I had studied would be applicable to the United States of America. It never dawned on me. And if someone would have said that, I would have thought they were nuts. So I'll give one example. Stalin called Trotsky a fascist. Trotsky, of course, along with Lenin, founded the Bolshevik Party and was the head of the Red Army during the Russian Civil War following the Russian Revolution. I mean, he without Trotsky, certainly without Trotsky and Lenin, there wouldn't have been a communism to speak of, a communist party. And here is Stalin calling Trotsky a fascist. Now, why did he do that? And the answer is the left, since Stalin, all leftists call those who oppose them Hitlers, Nazis, fascists, etc. The defamation of the opponent is the way in which, aside from murder, but that is the way in which the left everywhere, from universities to countries, deal with opponents. We don't debate, we defame. There are 35 professors at the Arizona State University objected to my coming to speak there last year. And among the things that they called me, this happens routinely because an anti-Semite, they're not aware. They're not aware that not only am I a Jew, but I'm a committed Jew, but it doesn't matter because they just have a checklist. Racist. What is it? I actually made up an acronym. SIXER. Sexist, intolerant, xenophobic, homophobic, Islamophobic, racist, bigoted. I made that up like 20 years ago. This is all they do. My dear friend Larry Elder, who's one of the leading black thinkers in America, he ran for governor in California, and the LA Times, the Los Angeles Times, said that he was the black face of white supremacy.
Yeah. Maybe before we could go on, I wanted to ask you about the right, and we're at the Republican convention. We're recording this, but what about Biden? He seems to be. We saw at the debate he's out of it, but we've been seeing it before the 2020 election that he was out of it. And what it seems to me was that he was sort of a vessel for the people around him that couldn't bring a Bernie Sanders, for example, because the mainstream of America wouldn't buy it. So they took an empty vessel and through him tried to bring progressive agenda into actual fruition. And so now he's not useful anymore, and they're throwing him under the bus. Do you agree, first of all, with that theory of mine? And second of all, do you think that he will actually be the nominee?
I 100% agree with you. That's why when people for these last 3 years have spoken about Biden. I never, ever speak about Biden from the daily radio show in the United States and podcasts and speeches and writings. Biden has been of no interest to me because if Biden weren't there, it wouldn't matter who was there. The problem for America is the left, not Biden. Kamala Harris would be the same. Adam Schiff would be the same. Nancy Pelosi would be the same. Bernie Sanders would be the same. AOC would be the same. It doesn't matter. So this preoccupation with Biden is of no concern to me. He's of no interest to me. The left is destroying the Western world, not just the United States. It begins with the U.S. because it's the most powerful country. And of course, it wants to destroy Israel, the left. The left and Hamas and Hezbollah and Iran have the exact same aim, the destruction of Israel. That there are so many Jews on the left, I don't even mean liberal Jews. Liberal Jews vote for the left, which is, they'll have to answer to Hashem for that. But they're not leftists who want Israel destroyed. But there are a fair number of Jews on the left who support those who wish to annihilate the only Jewish state, and it's the only state in the world that is targeted for annihilation. It's very important to remember. But that's why you're right. Biden is an empty vessel, except he is an utterly non-moral being. He does not, in my opinion, have a functioning conscience. I won't develop the theme right now, but that is how I perceive. But even if he were honorable personally, it wouldn't matter. You could be honorable personally and have awful macro values. There were people who were personally honorable and who supported slavery. Humans are two different creatures morally, macro and micro. You can be macro fantastic and micro awful. You could be macro awful and micro fantastic. Biden is neither macro nor micro particularly morally impressive.
But Dennis,
so you had a second question? What was that again?
Do you think he's going to be the nominee? Although it doesn't matter, like you said.
Right, it doesn't matter. Well, it only matters in that he is less electable than other leftists. He is equally damaging, but he's less electable in the general election. So the Democrats are going crazy with regard to him. But I don't know what they would do other than Michelle Obama. I don't know how they would bring her in. I mean, it would have to be pretty much Kamala Harris, who is not one whit more likable or admirable than he is.
Yeah.
So they're in a bind. And after Saturday, Donald Trump is the first larger-than-life president of my lifetime.
Yeah.
He gains a status that I have not seen anyone have. Even Ronald Reagan. Reagan was a wonderful, I think, and leader, not just president, but a leader. But watching him under fire, most human beings would have just yelled instinctively, I'm shot, I'm bleeding, get me out of here. And he just gets up and goes, fight.
Yeah.
It's the stuff of legend.
Yeah. Dennis, about leftism, we speak. Do you think there's a difference? Well, I mean, after October 7th, I have family who's, I guess you'd say, like you mentioned, Jewish liberals, we could call them maybe, people who vote Democrat and are Jewish. And they suddenly realize that a lot of their allies on the progressive left don't really like Jews so much. And they suddenly realize that maybe when people are talking about equality and equity and all that, maybe the Jews don't fit in so much to this equation. How do you talk to these people? How do you explain this phenomenon that they didn't realize? I think truly they didn't realize who their allies are.
I have no hope for the Jewish liberal. So there's nothing you can say to that. If they still vote Democrat, even though the Democrats have led the anti-American forces that have erupted in my lifetime, that America is systemically racist, that America was founded in 1619, according to the New York Times, not in 1776. That the Biden administration and all Democrats in office virtually want it to be legal to have a girl's breasts removed if she says she's a boy, who believe that men who say they're women can compete in women's sports. If that hasn't taught the liberal how scummy the Democratic Party has become, that they're not still voting for Roosevelt or Kennedy, that's gone. It's over. If they didn't realize that before, I don't know how many will realize that now. And so I what can I say? It's Jews who abandon the Torah as and I don't mean even halacha, I mean the Torah. Jews who abandon the Torah as the source of their values. In general, there are certainly exceptions. There are very wise secular Jews, but generally speaking, they become stupid. And look, the majority of the people who gave Stalin the secrets to the atom bomb were Jews. Given how tiny the Jewish percentage is in the Western world, do you realize what a shame that is, a stain on Jewish history? When Jews leave Judaism, they tend not to be all that impressed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and about the left in general in America, leaving aside the Jews, maybe not. Maybe the reason why it seems, or it doesn't seem, we see it, that there's so much hatred for Jews on the left now, on the extreme left, but even it's creeping into more mainstream leftism. We see all the protests after October 7th. There's sort of an alliance. Maybe I'll ask you about this: an alliance between the Islamists and the communists. The Red Green Alliance, the wokest, who's wearing, like you said, the dresses on the boys, and the girls are wearing the men's pants, and on the other end, the Islamist is wearing his kafia, and they're both together praying in the sun outside. How do you explain the alliance?
They both hate the West.
Yeah.
And Israel. Israel has been accused for 75 years of being an outpost of Western civilization in the Middle East. That is entirely accurate. It's one of the few things the left and the Islamists say that is accurate. Israel is an outpost of Western civilization in the Middle East. They hate Western civilization. They have contempt for it. It is a colonialist, racist endeavor. And it has to be gotten rid of, with its heteronormativity of the nuclear family as the ideal, you name it. So yes, it makes perfect sense that nothing symbolizes it better than queers for Palestine.
Yes.
A queer in Palestine is likely to be killed. So it doesn't matter, though. It doesn't matter. Just as it doesn't matter if men have an inherent advantage in women's sports. The reality doesn't matter to the left. It's hard for people to understand what I'm saying because it sounds so crazy. They don't take reality seriously. The Oregon Education Department in the United States, state of Oregon, its education department announced that it is white supremacy to declare that there is one correct answer in math.
Isn't that the whole point of math, that there's one correct answer?
Well,
Like 1 + 1 is 2.
You gave away your non-leftism.
Well, no, maybe I'm a racist, but that's beside. I'm a white supremacist.
No, I didn't think of that. Yeah.
But Dennis, just to clarify, when you say the left, what do you mean by the left? Because I saw this.
I always distinguish between left and liberal.
Mm-hmm.
I have a very important video at PragerU, 5-minute video, and I have a very important article on this. If anybody wants to look, differences between left and liberal, just Google Dennis Prager and that, and it'll come up. So, as an example, the free speech.
Yeah.
The left has never believed in free speech. Never. Not since the Russian Revolution till the wherever the left is in control, whether it's a country or it's a university,
Right.
they do not allow dissent. There is no exception to that. Liberals allow dissent. Leftists do not allow dissent. Okay? Capitalism. Liberals believe correctly that only capitalism lifts people from poverty. The left hates capitalism. Another example I gave well before October 7th is Israel. Liberals have always been pro-Israel. The left has always hated Israel. So the differences are the left celebrates Western civilization. The liberals celebrate Western civilization. The left loathes Western civilization. So the differences are enormous.
Yeah. Do you think that the liberals, at least some of them, if the right and the conservative movement understands that they are in a conundrum, that their base is being taken over by the left, as we explained, and they have no home, maybe the right should be a welcome place for them to be at this point? Should the right?
It should be, but it isn't, because every liberal Jew I know, and even liberal non-Jews, has been brainwashed, and I mean fully, thoroughly brainwashed, to believe that the right is their enemy. The left may be mistaken, but it's never pas d'ennemis à gauche. There's no enemies on the left. Famous French phrase. This is what the liberal believes. The liberal believes that as you go right, you go to Hitler. Right equals Hitler. Conservative leads to it. Prager University, with its billions and billions of views, is attacked regularly by every leftist group. And the most common, or one of the most common attacks is it's right wing, and though it itself isn't racist or fascist, it leads people to racism and fascism. Because all conservatism leads people to fascism. This is, and in the Jewish mind, right wing equals Hitler equals Auschwitz. And so there's nothing the left can do that will shake most liberal Jews into realizing that they share values with conservatives, not with leftists.
But we do see, for example, Elon Musk, just as an example, he has that famous graph that he put up where he's like, in 1995, I was here and the left was here with me, the Democrat Party. In 2006, I was here, they were still there. And then I stayed in the same place. They're going more and more left. And he's like, in 2024, or wherever he put it up, they're all the way on like the communist manifesto, and I'm stuck in my place, and the right is moving towards me. And I think there is some sort of movement, at least if Elon could do it, I guess other people can too. But maybe you have to be a free thinker to go through that and not, like you say, brainwashed. Just we're aren't the Republican.
Well, Elon Musk is not a Jew, so
that's true.
Jewish liberals are, of all liberals, Jewish liberals are the most brainwashed. Chuck Schumer could get up and tell Israel what prime minister they should have. Has an American majority leader in the history of the U.S. Senate ever done that to an ally? I don't believe so.
I don't think also to not an ally, but I'm just thinking. I don't think it's appropriate even for someone that you don't like to tell them who they should elect and who they should throw out of office, and then say it's for their own good. Anyway, speaking about moving to the Republican Party, their convention is now, and President Trump nominated J.D. Vance to be the vice president. And I thought it was interesting because I met with Yoram Chazoni not too long ago, and he J.D. Vance was at a number of his conferences. And what he explained was that J.D. Vance is a very different type of Republican than what we've seen in terms of the, first of all, the economic views, which are more protectionist. Well, I don't think we've seen as much of a person that way in the Republican Party till now in such a high position. And also the fact that he's very, I would say, populist in the messaging that he's giving. And so my question to you is how do you think the Republican Party is changing under Trump? There's all these articles, everything's changing, isolationism. How does that relate to Israel for us here in Israel? Where do you think the right is going on these stuff?
It's a very tough question. There isn't one right. Yeah, there are a few rights, and so the Tucker Carlson right, that is isolationist.
Yeah.
I mean, Tucker Carlson said that if you think that the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki were moral, you're evil. I wrote a whole. I mean, it was tough for me to write. I like Tucker. He done a PragerU video. I was on his show. We both spoke in Hungary a couple of years ago, the same conference. So it's not easy. But if you think anyone who thinks that the atom bombs on Japan were evil, or anyone who thinks they were moral is evil,
Yeah.
that's really crossed a bridge that conservatives have never crossed. That is what the far left has argued. America is evil for dropping those bombs. So I am worried about some segment of the right, to be honest.
Do you think that
I think morally, I don't think right, left. I think moral, immoral.
Yeah, but if we have the right wing, I mean, I hope, from my perspective, I hope that Donald Trump is going to be the next president. We spoke about how dangerous the Biden administration is, whoever is in charge over there. And so if he is going to come in, obviously he appoints people, and some of the people around him do have this type of Tucker Carlson thinking. And what should we expect? I know we can't know exactly what to expect, but should we be worried here in Israel about different aspects of the policy that any future Trump administration might have?
I don't worry about a Trump administration, but down the road,
Mhm.
given the left drift of the Democratic Party and the somewhat isolationist drift of the younger Republicans, it is worthy of concern. I mean, Israel. I'm sorry to say this because I love the U.S. and Israel, but I love truth more than anything else. Israel has to become as self-reliant as possible.
Yeah. Well, we're already talking about that here now in terms of how much it's possible, even. You're such a small place.
I know. I agree
Yeah.
with you completely.
Yeah.
Very tough. It's a very tough question.
Do you think
And forgive me, I just will say with the alienation from Jewish commitment, either nationally or religiously among so many Jews, that's even that natural ally of Israel is weakening.
Yeah. And we see that also in terms of the younger generation of Jews who aren't Orthodox in America, just pointing it out that we see that they're less connected. First of all, they're less connected to Judaism, but as a consequence, they're less inclined to support Israel, less inclined to give to causes that have relations with Israel, less inclined to support candidates who it's an issue for them. So we do see that the more religious you are, Judaism, the more you're connected to your Judaism, the more you obviously support Israel, and I think also obviously support America, but that's besides the point. I guess do you think that there is, because if we talk about anti-Semitism in America, it seems to me that the real the place where we should be scared of is on the left, because we've seen all these protests and we see the rhetoric of the leaders, not just the people on the streets, the leaders who you saw in the Columbia where they're texting the deans but as they're talking about anti-Semitism, they're like, oh, look at these crybabies, these Jews, the deans in Colombia. And so, but on the other hand, we have heard like one of the people that I've seen lately is Candace Owens. I don't want to talk about her personally, but she did like say Mengele didn't do as bad as it was, as we were taught, and all these kinds of stuff. So should we put an eye out for anti-Semitism on the right, or do you think it's overblown?
Well, the current enemy is the left.
Yes.
The left has always been an enemy of the Jews, from Trotsky, from Marx to Trotsky to the present. The right, I don't know how widespread on the right is some antipathy to Jews, and therefore to Israel, or Israel and therefore Jews and children. I don't know which comes first, the chicken or the egg there. But let's put it this way: the instinctive, visceral support for Israel on the right is not what it was.
Yeah.
Look, the Republican Party is staggeringly pro-Israel. It's something Jews should thank God daily for. But even among evangelicals, a lot of evangelicals have children who have abandoned Christianity, or certainly abandoned evangelicalism, and a lot have stayed Christian, but don't have the instinctive support, theological or moral, for Israel, because they went to college and their values have ceased to be shaped in large measure by Christianity and much more by the left. I've said this all my life: the left has affected the religions of the West far more than the religions of the West have affected the West.
Yeah.
And it's a very big problem. So I don't have a crystal ball. I only know that it is a battle that we have to wage.
Dennis, one of the things that I think that we should be talking about, and I wanted to ask you about, is that you talk about the young generation, and I think the number one thing that we can see about young people in the West, and I'm putting Israel aside because we're very different on this issue, is that church attendance in the West and synagogue attendance in America is plummeting in the last generations. And I have how much do you think this plays into what we're seeing on college campuses? What we're seeing, for example, on suicidality rates, on just on the decline of our society, the fact that people aren't going to church or to places of worship, they aren't going to a sense of community that they had through their places of worship. They're lonely, they're sad. I mean, you look at the protesters in New York or wherever, Harvard, they all look very, very sad and depressed. Their faces. It's anecdotal, but I think it does explain something about where all this is coming from. Do you agree with my proposition?
I often summarize my life's work, and if to do it in a sentence, to expose the consequences of secularism. That has been my life's work. And that is, by the way, why this will sound brazen, but I'm willing to sound brazen. I think I brought more Jews to Judaism and more non-Jews back to church than any living person. There are people before me who brought more, but right in my among those living, and one of the biggest reasons I've been so effective is that I have made the case for God and religion by making the case against secularism.
Mm-hmm.
Secularism is a moral and personal dead end. It is a void. And as I often put it, and I have many ways of putting this, only secular people say men give birth. Not all secular people say that, but only secular people say that. It's a curse. They have no foundation for a moral system. They'll say reason. Yes, if they were truly rational, they would be wonderful. But very few human beings are fully rational. And anyway, even that isn't a guarantor. It was not rational to risk your life to hide a Jew in the Holocaust.
Right.
Reason does not necessarily lead to morality. And when you have to fight the heart, reason usually loses in the battle against the heart. That's why they hate the Ten Commandments. The Ten Commandments, most secular people think murder is wrong. So what they hate about the Ten Commandments is that God said murder is wrong. And they're certain that God is unnecessary morally. And they're 100% wrong.
But what do you think? So, do you think that the West is doomed in the sense that if the current trends continue, there's going to be a minority of people that are actually going to be non-secular, meaning at least in terms of the way we used to define religion, people aren't going to places of worship anymore. I mean, I was talking to a friend in London. Half of the churches are now turning into mosques because the Christians aren't going to church and the Muslims are growing because of migration and birth rates, and so they're taking over the places of worship. So where are we going from here?
There is no hope for the West if there isn't some God-centered, Bible-centered, Judeo-Christian-centered Renaissance.
Mm-hmm.
As I put it in a column I wrote a few months ago, when in America, when Americans went to church, Jews did really well.
Yes. Yeah. One last thing that I saw that you were interviewed on, I think it was GB News in Britain, and you said about you. They were he was asking the interviewer about isolationism, and you were explaining that you were explaining that you were not calling to go to war in all situations and just the nuances, and it seemed to be fairly obvious that no one is saying go to war everywhere. That's you know. So my question is about Iran. We're hearing today that they're upgrading their their weapons program. They're obviously funding everyone who's throwing missiles at us. And October 7th was basically all funded by them in Qatar. And they're training all the people who want to kill us. And their basically whole raison d'etre of being around is to destroy Israel. And my question is not what Israel should do. What does America have any role if push comes to shove and there's nothing else to do than to attack Iran and to prematurely before they could get us, so to speak? Does America have a role to play? Should America have a role to play?
Well, the first role America should play is not strengthening the most dangerous regime on earth. And under the Democrats, that's exactly, whether it was Barack Obama or Joe Biden, staggering sums of money shipped over there, the truly destructive and foolish agreement on nuclear weapons. It's staggering. The desire on the left to deny real evil. This is what happens, and I've said this also all of my life. When you don't fight real evils, you make up evils to fight.
Yes.
And so they fight Israel. They don't fight Iran on the left. It's really quite remarkable. It's the human condition is a pathetic one.
But do you think that America would have a role, should have morally a role to play?
Yes, they do. But it's everybody's fighting the last war. Oh, we should have gone into Iraq. Okay, fine. That's probably the case. What does that have to do with Iraq? But it's Jews are certainly fighting the last war. As I coming back to the point or earlier, the analogy I always give is: imagine your grandfather was killed by a hit and run driver coming from the right.
Hmm.
So you will always cross the street only looking to your right, as if cars don't come from the left as well. This is the Holocaust. The Holocaust came from people think of the Nazis as the right, but they were not right or left. They were racist, which is not right or left. It's not true, but
Hmm.
it doesn't matter. They think it was right. So what they do is they keep looking right for the next, the direction of the right. No. There's just as good a chance that you will be killed by a one driver coming from the left. But people don't think that way.
Right. Dennis, one thing that before we finish, remembered as we were finishing is that if I remember correctly, wasn't it you that was on the Bill Maher show when you said, I think it was like 7 years ago, and you said there'll be women in sports or something like that, and the whole crowd started laughing at you, and then now we're there, something
Yeah,
to
I'll tell
that
you
effect.
exactly what it is. It's gone viral. There are many
Yeah.
million views. So it's actually, it was 4 years ago. Right, it was right before COVID, actually, so 4.5 years ago. And I was on his show, and he said, "Oh, Trump lies all the time." I go, well, it doesn't compare to the left's lies. Like America's systemically racist, and like men menstruate. So he looks at me and goes, "Wait, I'm paraphrasing. Where the hell did you come up with that one?"
And everybody was laughing at you.
And the entire audience and the entire panel and Bill Maher were laughing at me. By the way, for the record, it means nothing to me because if I know I'm right, I don't care if
Right.
everybody's laughing. And I knew I was right. And sure enough, the last laugh is with me. That's exactly what the left says. But it just shows men menstruate 4.5 years ago, and the mainstream liberal audience, mainstream liberal host, laughed at the idea. Now, if you deny men menstruate, you're a transphobe.
Mm-hmm. And it makes you scared about where we're going next. What's the next thing?
Yes, that's right.
They're always looking for something else to push on us. And I'm very happy that at least in Israel, and I think this is where maybe we can end off on Israeli society, is that all the things that we talked about until now obviously are here in Israel, but I think to a lesser extent. And I think for two reasons, and maybe I don't know how much you're into Israeli society, but I think maybe you could just comment on it. The fact that Israelis are having way more kids than any other country in the Western world, and the number of Israelis who are identifying as traditional or religious is going up and not down, as opposed to other Western countries. Do you think that those two could be indicators of a healthy society, as opposed to all the opposite tracks that are being taken by, I guess, every other Western country in the world?
Totally. I mean, what is a greater statement of hope for the future than having children?
Yeah.
And having as the building block of your society, the family unit. On the other hand, Israel has problems that America doesn't have nearly as much. We don't have the leading religious figures in America saying that it is not important to fight, it is important to pray
Yeah.
or study the Bible. I know Christians as well as Jews. And I don't know of a Christian leader who would say what the I think Sephardic chief rabbi said.
Yeah.
It's just as important or more important that we have people studying Torah as we have people fighting an idea. So that's absurd. It's literally, and it bothers me because I'm a believing Jew. I'm writing the 5th volume of my 5-volume commentary on the Torah. I'm trying to bring this great divine book to the world. But nevertheless, it's an absurdity.
Yeah.
So
What?
you have problems that we don't have. And of course you have the problem of being surrounded by people who want to exterminate you.
That's a
Canada and Mexico don't want to exterminate the United States.
big problem.
Yeah.
I would just say about the problem that we do control is the internal stuff that you mentioned. And I think that, well, on our show in Hebrew, we talk about it a lot. And I grew up, I told you, in an ultra Orthodox community in Brooklyn. And I went at the age of 14, I moved to Israel, and I was in yeshiva here as an ultra Orthodox Hasidic Jew. And now, obviously, I'm not. And so I know a little bit about what's behind the scenes and what's happening. And it's very, very sad that about a fifth of the Jews in Israel feel in a lot of ways that they don't have to participate, like you said. Their participation is to sit in a yeshiva and study, while my friends are, three friends already passed away in Gaza. And it's just as a Jewish person, it's very, very um, disconcerting. And I really hope that the change will come from the inside, because the government cannot send, policemen to grab hundreds of thousands or 60, 70,000 people from the yeshiva to the army. It's not something that's feasible. And so the change has to come from within. And the good thing is that in communities like that, they'll do what the rabbi says. So if you can convince the rabbis that this is the right thing to do, things can change. But people get used to it's very comfortable. Just everybody else, work is a lot less than the people who pay the taxes. You don't have to go. So it's I think the communities get very used to the way they're living. In the 70s, they didn't live like this. They did work. They did go to the army all the way up to the 70s. You know what happened in the 70s?
With regard to what?
With the ultra-Orthodox in Israel. The first time they joined the coalition, they were able to get money and exemptions.
Right.
And that's what happened. And I think that goes to show also for America in a lot of ways that a lot of things happen from incentives that you get from the government. So the government gives you money. It will take a few thousand, not everyone.
You can't have a free society with a big government.
Exactly.
You can't have a non-corrupt society and a big government.
Yes.
The bigger the government, the smaller the citizen.
100%.
One of my mottos of life.
Dennis, I have to say that it was a pleasure talking to you. And
Mutual.
I wish you, I have to say, you're a champion of freedom and a champion of Jewish values. So I follow you from here. I listen to your program a lot. And so it's really an honor to hear your voice talking to me. And I have to say that I'd love for you to keep in touch with us, and hopefully in the future have you again.
Happily.
Thank you so much, Dennis.
I know.